Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled The Autodesk IFC-SG Interoperability Tools for Upcoming CORENET-X Submissions. My name is Vanessa. I am the Secretary of buildingSMART Singapore and your host for the event today. On behalf of buildingSMART Singapore, of which Autodesk is also a member, I want to thank all of you for taking time out to join us here and also extend our gratitude to BCA and the Singapore Institute of Architects for working with us to bring this event to you. So we begin today by welcoming Architect William Lau, representing the Singapore Institute of Architects today as the chair of the Digital Committee, to say a few words to start us off. William, please.
Hi, good afternoon. You hearing me loud and clear?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good afternoon to friends and reps from your respective firms. I'm William Lau on behalf of SIA. We're glad to be co-hosting together with BCA, Autodesk, and buildingSMART Singapore to showcase this improved interoperability tool. Well, to bring the context of this event, our digital transformation started more than 20 years ago when BCA rolled out the roadmap to elevate the digital competency of the construction industry, now referred to as the built environment sector. The digital transformation has evolved from BIM to VDC or IPD, and now latest to integrated digital delivery, or commonly referred to as IDD. Likewise, our CORENET submission system, which is more than 20 years, have upgraded to CORENET 2.0 last year, and will now be replaced by a totally new revamped submission system known as CORENET-X, intended to roll out third quarter this year. So CORENET-X will be leveraging technologies such as BIM, automation, CD, etc., in order to transform the regulatory approval process for building works. Several digital initiatives will be rolled out concurrently to support CORENET-X. The BIM model submission for regulatory approval will be required to be in IFC format. The IFC is a de facto open standard interoperability tool in the BIM environment, commonly referred to as a PDF for BIM. Actually, we have already implemented identical adoption of ISO 16739, which is the IFC standard. It is now known as SS, which stands for Singapore Standard, ISO 16739/2023, which is available for purchase locally. And in addition, the CORENET-X team, together with GovTech, have developed the localized IFC standard, which is referring to IFC-SG, to facilitate auto-plan checking, which is another key feature of CORENET-X. Now, I understand most of you are architects or BIM modelers here. Well, as architects, we are the original creator of the BIM model, so it is vital that the BIM model complies with this new IFC-SG standard. To support CORENET-X and IFC-SG, the respective software vendors have each developed their respective solutions to ease the task of implementing BIM model conversion, comply with IFC-SG standard. And we're glad that Autodesk, being proactive, have initiated this event to showcase their improved IFC-SG interoperability tool for Revit users. Well, we look forward to the presentation by Autodesk later, and wish to thank them in advance for the contribution and support in our journey to embrace the new CORENET-X. I guess next we'll have Vanessa, as she has already introduced herself. She's the current Secretary of buildingSMART Singapore, as well as a director in AcePLP, offering BIM services to guide firms in digital transformation, and also provide training courses for firms to gain competency in digital delivery and groom teams to embrace the latest technologies to face new challenges. So over to you, Vanessa.
Thank you, William. Now, as the Secretary of buildingSMART Singapore, allow me to tell you a little bit more about what we do. All right. buildingSMART is an open, neutral, and non-profit organization. Our mission is to integrate the built environment, consisting of architects, engineers, project managers, BIM managers, and facility managers, to build a future where everyone can work together using IFC as the universal language for communication and collaboration throughout the life cycle of buildings and infrastructure. The buildingSMART community all around the world is committed to advocating for open digital ways of working. Being open is fundamentally important, especially when we talk about digital, because we never want to find ourselves in a situation where we have a lot of data in files that cannot be opened. When everyone agrees to relate their digital information to a common denominator, no matter what software was used to create it, that common denominator will serve as our base for which our data will always stay protected for longevity. That is what IFC is all about. We are not only working towards a world where the entire built environment supply chain can collaborate more effectively. We are also safeguarding ourselves against a catastrophic loss of information that may be critical to the functioning of our society. Let's imagine the worst case scenario, say 100 years down the road, when there is no software available to open up the files containing important information about our built assets. In that nightmare scenario, so long as there is somebody who knows how to code, they would be able to use the language that IFC offers to create a platform that can open and read IFC files. And for that reason, the CORENET-X project is a significant milestone in terms of its use of IFC models for regulatory submissions and review. And in a while, we will have Yixiang, Deputy Director of the CORENET-X team, to tell us more about that project. In support of the vision that CORENET-X is striving to achieve, buildingSMART Singapore will be rolling out a series of BIM interoperability webinars in collaboration with various technology partners like Autodesk and with trade associations representing various groups of professionals within our built environment. Through our webinars, we want to make the knowledge of creating and using quality IFC models easily available to everyone so that together we can grow our digital competency and improve the quality of data used and produced within our built environment. Now, the people in our community, such as architects, engineers, the project managers, all of us will invariably use digital for our work. And all of us will experience successes and challenges with data interoperability within the built environment. buildingSMART wants to hear about all of your experiences. Build a community that allows us to support one another through our digital journey with the aim that collectively, as built environment professionals, we will all benefit and grow from each other's experiences and knowledge. Separately, some of you may already be well acquainted with us as the accreditation body of the Digital Delivery Management Accreditation Scheme, or DDM accreditation in short. Our work in driving the DDM accreditation scheme will ensure that our built environment continues to be staffed by competent digital professionals. The skills framework for the built environment under Skills Future provides that common language and benchmark that we can all use to recruit, retain, and develop the best people in our work, for our work. And by driving the recognition of digital competency, acknowledging the skills and knowledge of the hardworking people in our sector, we will move towards a future where everyone is fairly remunerated, where every person knows how to progress to a job role that suits them, and ultimately where we have an industry with good jobs available for every person that is willing to serve in it. So I invite you to join us at buildingSMART Singapore to do this together with us. All right, now Yixiang is going to tell you a little bit more about CORENET-X project. Yixiang, over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Yixiang from CORENET-X project office in BCA. So without further delay, I'll just give a very short thank you to Vanessa, buildingSMART, and then William from Singapore Institute of Architects, coming together to co-host this event. We have worked very hard to with the major software, key software provide developers to make sure that all the BIM software tools are able to come on board this IFC Singapore format, IFC-SG format, and we really appreciate Sagar, Brad, and then John and all the Autodesk team for working so hard to come together to make this interoperability tools. And we really also especially appreciate their effort to troubleshoot so many issues that came up the way, and also all the industry members who worked with us throughout this journey to make the Autodesk interoperability tools better. And then throughout today's this webinar sharing, I hope that all of you who are using Revit can go back and test and try out and let us know if there are any further ways that we can improve this tool, so that you will be able to make your regulatory submissions to CORENET-X more easily in the future. Yeah, so then nothing more from myself. So if you have any further queries on CORENET-X, do visit our website at go.gov.sg/cx. And if you have any queries, you can let us know, and then we will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Yeah, back over to Vanessa, please.
Thank you, Yixiang. Now we have Brad Carson, Senior Manager for AEC Strategy APAC at Autodesk, and he will give you an overview of Autodesk's Open BIM strategy. Brad, tell us more.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'll just share my screen. I'm hoping that everyone can see my screen. If not, let me know, but I'll continue. So, thanks to everyone for their comments. The one thing I would say is, from our perspective, standards make the industry better. The minute that you standardize, you have all the benefits of standardization. One of the key benefits is you lower risk to the supply chain. Once you have a standard, all businesses know what they need to do and what they need to achieve to meet that standard. The big outlier is, how does technology support that standard? I want to talk briefly about Autodesk and our journey for interoperability. And I want to talk about our absolute commitment to not only interoperability, but to buildingSMART, which predates this engagement. In fact, we've been committed to buildingSMART for decades. And just as a quick reminder, buildingSMART and Autodesk have been very tightly intertwined for a long time, way back to the days of the International Alliance for Interoperability in the late 90s, which actually became buildingSMART. And IFC as a format has been around for a very long time. So we have a very strong tie and a very large and long-standing commitment to interoperability, because we see interoperability and exchange formats and neutral file formats as a way to ensure that we have better project delivery, and in particular in countries like Singapore, and we're going to speak specifically about IFC-SG, it's a way in which we can look at quality of data, quality of information, quality of handover, and we can ensure that we meet those standards and the requirements for not just one agency, but potentially a multi-agency approach. And so we're deeply committed to this, and we're deeply committed to the open standard approach. And just as a quick reminder, I know this isn't about IFC 2x3, 4.3 BCF and BSDD, but as a reminder, our technologies do support all of those formats. We go through a rigorous campaign every year to ensure that our technology meets the requirements of IFC. And in fact, we've launched very recently our support for IFC 4.3, and we've got some work in beta for the BSDD initiative that's happening as well. So again, it's not just about this initiative, it's about a much broader context of interoperability. The other thing that we've done is that we've put our support for Revit on the GitHub. It was on SourceForge, but we decided to open that up and put it on GitHub. And I've got down there the Autodesk desktop app. That's changed to Autodesk Access. And the reason we've done that is that we wanted to ensure that if there were major changes to IFC and our support for IFC, we could push those out very readily. And you, as the supply chain and the ecosystem and customers of Autodesk, you could get those updates more readily rather than to wait for a new release. And secondly, it enables us to receive direct feedback on how our technology is supporting IFC. And we'll talk specifically now about, why are we doing this as an industry very quickly? Because we need to unlock value. Interoperability is the linchpin of unlocking value. If we have solid interoperability between concept design, construction, and handover, we have value across the entire supply chain. But to do that, we have to unlock the data. So a lot of what the BCA are doing, and we congratulate the BCA for taking this initiative on, is to unlock data in the supply chain and ensure that we're deriving value from projects, not only building projects, but across building and infrastructure projects as well in the near future. And that's what IFC-SG and CORENET-X is there to achieve. One of the key reasons why we again think this is really important is that we know that there is a lot of digital waste. There's a lot of data loss that happens in the industry. And one report suggests that, about 95 or 96% of all data goes unused in engineering and construction. And a lot of that data is our data, the public's data, the way in which we procure that data. And going forward, if we're going to have unlocking of data and an unlocking of value in the supply chain, we've got to be better custodians of that data. And again, that's why we support buildingSMART, but more importantly, or as importantly, we're supporting the BCA with this IFC-SG initiative. I've been working with Sagar and the team for almost 2 years now on this initiative. And what that means for us over that 2 years is that we as Autodesk are creating a platform, and the minute that you create a platform, you create a data platform, you become a data company. And essentially that's what the BCA as an agency is doing as well. They are creating a platform and they are using data as the fuel and data as the engine. It's such an important initiative, not only for the building and construction industry, but for the whole of industry in Singapore. We have a series of tools that Sagar is going to touch on in a moment called the Autodesk Interoperability tools. These tools support the enumeration, the validation, and the delivery of data when you use Autodesk technologies. And it's not just Revit technologies, we have technologies for Civil 3D and for other technologies as well. We are big supporters of standardization of data, but we've got to have the tools to support the way in which you standardize. We're going to talk about how we support IFC-SG in a moment and how we're utilizing these tools to help you as the customers be able to comply with the IFC-SG initiative. All of these tools that we've spoken about are available for free at interoperability.autodesk.com/Singapore. We're working very closely with the BCA to ensure that our files that are hosted here are exactly the same files as what you can get from the BCA as well. And all of these check sets are in accordance with the latest version of IFC-SG, the most current version. And we've also created specific tools to support things like shared parameters and shared parameters file, specific to this initiative. So we're really, really proud of this. I've been leading this with Sagar, as I said, for 2 years. We're extremely proud of where we're at. There's always room for improvement. And so that's why today is very, very important. There's 3 things that I want to leave everyone with today that will help us go forward as an industry. The first is this idea of unlocking data through interoperability. Interoperability is the key, data is the engine. And so as an industry, we need to do more in that space. We are seeing a revolution from application to platform. Part of this initiative and looking further down the track with this initiative with the BCA in Singapore is about looking more at data and platform. And for us, having partnerships with everyone here today, plus our customers. So a multi-customer and partnership approach is exactly the right approach. We can't do this alone. And so that's why working with buildingSMART, the Singapore Institute of Architects, with the BCA and with other agencies and other institutions is supremely important, because we only know what we know and we need that collaboration for this to work. And so we're really proud of where we're at. I want to thank everyone for coming today. I know there's a huge audience, so without further ado, I want to hand back to Vanessa and then hand over to hopefully to Sagar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett. Now we have Brett's teammate, Sagar Thorat, who is the Technical Solutions Executive at Autodesk. He will now show you how the Autodesk interoperability tools function. Sagar, show us what you got.
So I'm going to share my screen now, and thanks everybody for joining, and thanks for all the presenters earlier. So let me just get started. All right, so our focus today is to understand the content that is relevant to IFC-SG for Revit, right? How do you ensure standardized data models? And most of you joining today are architects and consultants, and as the first ones as the creators of this data and the BIM authoring that you do, it's important that that's conditioned for IFC-SG for you to have a successful CORENET-X submission. So we have a set of tools and content that enables you to do this, right? To successfully export IFC-SG models, not only export, but prepare them. So we are talking about the shared parameters tool, standardized data tool, the model checker, and the content. You would have the shared parameters tool configuration file and the model checker check set for IFC-SG and a web page that will host all of this data. Now we will understand where can you download these Autodesk interoperability tools and how you can install them, right? So most of the people might be familiar to this web page. So I'm just going to show it to you live. So the link that normally everybody accesses as Autodesk customers is manage.autodesk.com, right? Here is where your IT or you yourself, if you have access, is able to manage all your softwares as well as all the plugins in it. So if you go to all products and services, and within that, you will be able to search for Revit, and at the same time, in that you'll have the interoperability tools. So if you search for Revit, for example, and within Revit, you can normally view the details, and there you go, all your versions, the current version minus 3 versions, including 2023, 2022, and 2021. For all these versions, the extension, going under extension, you will see the interoperability tools version 9.1.8599, which was just released in August 9th, is where you will find this tool complete, right? So the shared parameters tool has been released and is included in this version only, right? The earlier versions don't have it. So if you have the earlier versions installed of the Autodesk interoperability tools, also called as the BIM interoperability tools, please uninstall those versions and install the newer version. For all Revit versions, you can install them. You can install them from 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024, right? You also have the IFC exporter that needs to be installed as well. So you would need these 2 tools to be installed within your particular Revit versions to be able to be successfully working with IFC-SG. So remember this, okay? Now, we also have a website for the Autodesk interoperability tools and the IFC-SG resources, which Brett has touched upon. Okay, so going back to the presentation. So remember the 2 tools to be downloaded and installed. They're very small, 13 MB and 7 MB. It'll be a super fast install and you will be up and ready in no time. Okay, and where do they sit in Revit? They sit inside the interoperability tools ribbon. And you will see on the left, to begin with, we have the shared parameters tool, we have the model checker, and we have the standardized data tool. These are the 3 key tools that you would need to be successful for IFC-SG classification, as well as preparation of your models and exporting them out. Okay. Now, these are available for current version minus 3 versions. So please remember, these are all standard across all Revit versions, current minus 3. Okay, now the first key file is the configuration file, which is available to you for you to open and check, but ideally you shouldn't be directly doing it, you can directly set that file to be used, and you can associate the parameters straight away. Okay. We have a check set file, which is called as the MCX check set file, the model checker for Revit. The model checker for Revit, please understand that this is for parameters, right, and values only. This is not for object-based, rule-based checking, which CORENET-X does, right? This is purely for you to have a clean IFC-SG model such that you can export them correctly, right? So apart from the model checker itself, the model checker does include best practices, right? All the Revit users today, or all the BIM managers, BIM coordinators, should be utilizing this particular function, which enables you to create a dashboard and check your model health, right? Model health is super critical because this enables you or reduces the export time to IFC. Right? Remember, you are exporting from Revit to IFC, and if you want to reduce the time of export, you would need a healthy model, right? Healthy model simply means minimum duplicate elements, having views not on sheets, for example, or having unused files purged. Having a clean model is super important, right? So model health checks are crucial for you to export IFC models at a later stage. Right. So these are the steps. There are 5 steps for you to successfully create IFC-SG models and export them in totality, right? Adding parameters, populating IFC classes, validating the parameters, and as well as populating the values and exporting finally to IFC-SG. So quickly looking at the parameters, the step 1, which is your shared parameters file, which can be directly hosted inside your tool, and you can run it to add all your parameters. And then the second step is assigning IFC classification. It's a crucial step. Without assigning an IFC4 classification, you will not be able to export the IFC-SG correctly. Remember that classification is super important, right? So let's dive straight into the demonstration. So our first part of the demonstration is to cover the adding of IFC-SG parameters using the shared parameters tool. And we will also cover populating the IFC classes. Yeah. So let's look at how you can use the shared parameters tool for adding IFC-SG parameters. So as we mentioned, the website today has the shared parameters configuration file. It has the model checker check set and the shared parameters file that you would need to function for the IFC-SG parameters installation as well, right? So remember, this URL will have all the data that you need, as well as it has sample videos which you can use as well. Yeah. So let's get into Revit, right? So we will use Revit 2023 for this demonstration, and we will be looking at interoperability tools in the ribbon. And over here, the shared parameters tool can be activated. You will be choosing the configuration file, which is a simple XML file, and you will be running this file straight away, right? So once you have chosen, you simply update, and all your IFC-SG parameters will be added to your model. Whether it is an architectural model, structure model, or an MEP model, doesn't matter. Model is a model. All the parameters will be successfully added without you going through the hassle of adding each shared parameters one by one, or going through a hassle of adding it through your manage tab in Revit, right? So it's a simple 3-step process. The second is populating of IFC classes. So populating of IFC classes is important because so remember that IFC-SG is based upon IFC 4.1, right? So IFC classes of 4.1 is what applies to IFC-SG. Hence, the IFC classification is super important, right? So what we would need is the standardized data tool, right? Which is for assigning of these classifications straight away, right? So let's say, for example, I have this particular chiller, right? Now I have assigned all the IFC classes to it. But what I'm going to do now is, so here are your IFC parameters, which are already populated. But what we need to do is to be able to populate the IFC export as well, right? So this is the classification which you would need to populate straight away, right? So there you go. This is your IFC export as, and how would you populate that? Is by going to the standardized data tool and having the assign classification activated, right? Once you open the assign classification dialog, you would have to load in the IFC4, right? The IFC4 class mappings for 4.1 will automatically detect which element it is, and you can automatically select the IFC chiller in this case, and I can assign this classification to all the chillers at once. And there you go. You'll have the IFC chiller assigned to the IFC export as value. Remember, only IFC export as value is to be populated, right? Not any other, which is the export IFC as, which I'll touch base in a while, right? So say, for example, here you would have the export to IFC as and the IFC export as. This is a default parameter from 2023 onwards. So remember that you do not have to touch this at all. Just focus on the IFC export as parameter, which gets populated as part of your shared parameters when you populate the parameters from IFC-SG. Okay, so remember, only IFC export as is to be used for classification. Do not use the export to IFC as, which we have used to deliver this for other markets. But for Singapore, we will only use the IFC export as. This will be covered in the guide as well when we prepare it. Okay. All right. So once you have assigned the classification, you can do this for different Revit categories. For example, for heat pumps, in this case, for the centrifugal heat pump, I can assign this classification as well, right? So here you have the heat pump, and I can choose that particular subclass and the parent class and assign that to the model itself. Now remember that all these parameters are actually grouped under, all these parameters are grouped under the IFC parameters grouping itself, okay? So remember that IFC export as parameter will be grouped under the IFC parameters, okay? All of them will be grouped under this. So we covered two aspects, and we'll go into the step 3 now, right? Step 3 is validation of these parameters. Once you have added the IFC-SG parameters, you have added the IFC classification. Now you need to validate it, right? To make sure that all the models that your modelers are preparing, or if your BIM engineers or BIM architects are preparing individually, each appointed party or task team would have to do this model checking. Yeah. So you'll use the model checker for Revit file set for this one. Okay. And step 4 will be populating the values, and final step is to export to IFC. Okay. So let's run through the 3 steps now. So step 3, as we mentioned, is to check your models, right? So in order to check your models, you would have to validate these parameters. And that's where you will download the model checker XML file as well, which is the model checker configuration file. Yeah. And you can download that from the interoperability website. Okay. So similar to the shared parameters file, the model checker file can also be downloaded from the same web portal where all the data is hosted. Yeah. Okay, so this is where the model checker file is. You will be able to download it right here. The model checker check set. It's clearly dependent upon the shared parameters tool configuration file itself. So this is your check set, is where you can download it. And once you have downloaded it, it simply can be used for checking your models. Again, remember, these are all open data formats. It's an XML format, right? So here you go. We will use the model checker. First thing, of course, you can set this up. Setting up is simply selecting the particular configuration file, the model check file. Okay, that's the one with an XML extension. You can open it up, and there you go. You can then choose which version of Revit you are using. There are checks for 2023, 2024, and 2022 and older versions. These have been separated. because of the reason of the IFC export as and the export to IFC as, right? So please remember that people who are using 2023 and 2024 would have to use the checking for that particular version. And you can also filter by discipline, right? So if you're just modeling the architecture part and you do not want to check anything related to mechanical and structure, the model checker allows you to do so, right? So you can specifically select only the Archi model and components, and you can run the checks on the models that are open, as well as the models that are linked to that particular Revit model. Yeah, so remember, you can run the checks on both. And within a minute or so, you should have the results. Depending on the model size, it might take 2 minutes or 5 minutes or so on. Yeah, yeah. So here I have some errors. The reason is that my model does not contain any columns, right? And there are some, we can see that there have been some checks for floors also which have failed. And for doors, we have them passed. So the model checker gives you a clear indication of which categories, which Revit categories have failed and which have passed, right? So once that have failed or the parameter is left blank, you can actually go and check them one by one or in groups, right? So it allows you to select that particular door, which let's say does not have an IFC export as, so people forgot to actually add in the classification, right? So in this case, you can straight away choose the IFC export as classification and run the check again, and you'll see that you will not have that error anymore, right? So you can always rerun these checks multiple times as you wish. So we are done with step 3, and then we go to step 4. Step 4 is critical, populating the IFC-SG parameters, which in general are the values, right? Now, values would differ from project to project and from team to team, right? So there is no such governance process for this particular reason, but values can directly be populated either manually or you can automatically set up those into your families, right? So if you look at the IFC parameters themselves, you can see there that I can sort of uncheck is portable, I can uncheck is barrier free, and I can start adding the widths and the lengths and the diameters. But if I don't want to do this manually, I would want to set this up into the family itself, right? So it's one of the most critical steps is to set up these values or generate them through a formula inside the family, right? So let's say we have this particular family, which is a screw chiller. And you can see that under this particular chiller, there are values like lengths, offsets, diameters, and so on. And I would want to use these values to populate in my IFC parameters, right, directly without me manually adding them, right, to avoid any error. In this case, I would get into the edit family mode for Revit, and then I would populate all the IFC parameters first within that family, right? And please note that only the parameters that are required for the family will be assigned. So in this case, this particular chiller family, only 15 parameters are required because these have been defined by IFC-SG that we only need these 15 parameters to be reported, right? So hence, the rest of the parameters will be ignored. Now, I would like to emphasize and highlight this, that this has been, there has been quite a lot of work going in the back end in terms of coding this thing in such that all other parameters of all other families, there may be 1,000 families, right, are now ignored, and only the parameters that are logically fit to the family will be assigned. So this is a big step that we have taken forward, that you're able to assign it only to the family. Yeah, nice. So let's move on from here. Once we have the parameters assigned, now what we would need to do is just to prepare a formula that will help you drive these values through, right? And people who are already used to Revit would understand that under the properties for family types in Revit, you can actually now go ahead and copy the name of the dimension. Let's say in this case, chiller length, copy that and go to your IFC parameters, the 15 parameters which just got populated, and in the formula column, simply enter the chiller length and apply it, right? What this will do is it will automatically relate the family value to the IFC-SG parameter value, right? And it will beautifully assign it to that, right? And once you have overwritten the family, you will see that the value will now be assigned and it will be locked. Most important, now it is locked so that people will not make errors, right? So this is a great way to prepare your families and to be able to assign all the values, right? Very important step. And if you change the value, you will see it automatically updates in the IFC-SG parameter. Yeah. So that's something which was quite a leap, months of work on that. So really, this is the crux of it, right? Ultimately, once you are ready with the model, the checking is done. The final step is exporting to IFC, which is the easiest of all, right? And in order for you to export to IFC, you would need the latest IFC exporter, which I've already shown you where you can download it. Manage.autodesk.com, again, going to your products and services, and straight away in there, finding the latest IFC exporter for your current version, and straight away utilizing that to export it to IFC. Like in this case, we have the IFC version 24 for Revit 2022, 2024, and Revit 23. I can download it and install it, right? So this is important. Please download the latest exporters, right? Do not work with old exporters because we have to constantly update the exporting functionality. And Revit can directly export IFC straight away. And people who are using 2024 would have the IFC-SG regulatory requirements JSON file integrated in the exporter, right? Who the earlier versions do not have this, for which you can simply use the JSON files that we will provide you, right? And done, right? Straightforward. We have now exported IFC-SG, and what we really need now is your feedback after using or implementing this workflow, right? So to conclude, this data that we showed today, all the content is available on this particular website. We have a dedicated website for Singapore, interoperability.autodesk/Singapore, and you can download the data sets. You can scan your QR codes and straight away go to this website as well, right? And with this, I would like to sort of open the floor to questions because we have about 12 minutes left, and it will be great if Vanessa, we can initiate some questions now.
Yes. Thank you, Sagar. So I'm sure a lot of Revit users here have questions, and I'm sure like many of them are delighted by the ease of managing data parameters within the Revit model. So we've got some questions. Thank you for everybody for contributing to the questions. All right, we've got some questions from Ted Tazor asking, what about the categories? What about shared categories with archi and structure like slab? Is there a way to filter the parameters required per discipline?
So you would have to set this up in your configuration file, right? In the configuration file, there is a possibility that for a particular user, you can actually choose the family category and assign it to a particular family category. In that case, you would be able to decipher between a slab, which is archi slab, and a slab, which is a structure slab, right? That's one way of doing it. And if somebody wants to answer it from, if Brett, you want to answer, please feel free to answer as well or type in your answer.
All right, then we can take the next question from John. John says, what defines the auto filtering of adding IFC-SG parameters to a family? Is it by family categories?
The auto filtering in the model checker, you mean? Is that the question?
John, could you clarify in the chat box? Okay, well, John is writing it in. Maybe we can take up Min Jing's question. Min Jing, so glad you're able to join us here today. Min Jing's got a long list of questions. All right, could you provide advice for the following queries? So he's asking on the template, is there a Revit template available for sharing within the industry that includes necessary parameters and IFC export settings?
So as such, we wanted to keep this neutral, not to have a template, to be honest, because the shared parameters configuration file, the model checker file, is acting as a template. So anybody and everybody, regardless of having a template, can use that, right? And we wanted the exporter to be as part of the 2024 version directly. We are working on having that exporter in 2023 generically, regardless of having a template or not. So we actually let go of having a template, and we would like to regulate it through the shared parameters configurator, the model checker check set, and the shared parameters file, which acts as a single source of truth and sort of removes any kind of complications.
Yeah, just to add to that, Sagar, hi everyone, it's Brett. We wanted to try and stay away from being tied to versions, which is one of the reasons why we didn't really want to be tied to templates. And if we are more tied to the actual standards and the shared parameters, should the BCA make changes, we can be much more agile in the way in which we can make changes with through the shared parameters file. So that's one of the reasons why we just wanted to stay away from templates and just stay away from that whole versioning thing going forward. So that's one of the other reasons.
Min Jing has a next question. Are there specific sets of Revit families that are designed to share with all of the industry? So these families that are aligned with the COP, with the code of practice.
So far we haven't sort of looked into it in future maybe, but for now we are leaving it to the particular agencies. Like for example, LTA might create their own families, HDB might create their own families, or release tenders to create such families. And those are the potentials we are looking at, to working with these agencies to have these standardized for different agencies.
Yeah, just to jump in there as well, and I understand the question. One of the things I would say is that we also wanted to have a way of meaningfully managing potentially some of those families. And right now we couldn't really land on a good spot with the way in which we would manage the families. So we know that it's there, but we've really focused on ensuring that out of the box you can do the you can comply with the standard and use the shared parameters file. So it's definitely a consideration. We just want to think a bit more creatively how we would do that going forward with families.
All right, maybe we'll take one last question from Min Jing about group elements. So his question is about the Autodesk Interoperability tool, and can it update data for group elements when the parameters are aligned according to group type? Sagar is mute.
Yes, so that's the purpose of the shared parameters file, that you can group them. Yeah, it's in the configuration file. So if you do open the configuration file, you will see there is an option to group them under a certain category.
Sagar, do you want to just quickly touch on that shared parameters tool as well and how that might sort of play into that question?
Yeah, sure. I would have to share my screen actually.
That's fine. Yeah, and just to give everyone some further context, the way in which traditionally you would manage shared parameters was a bit cumbersome, and the way you would copy schedules and those sorts of things. So we wanted to get away from that as well, and we wanted to rationalize that process. And we work very closely with the BCA on this, and we've created a specific tool that's available today called the Shared Parameters tool, which alleviates some of those technical issues when it comes to using shared parameters across Revit files. So we urge you to download that tool and to start using that tool. There's some YouTube videos that walk you through that, and Sagar's kind of showed you how that works today.
So we have this set up and run over here. So in general, when you set up the file, you can actually look at starting from scratch or using the current tool that we have, right? So let's say if you start from scratch, and if I go next, I can actually browse to the IFC-SG shared parameters version 1 by the CORENET-X team, which you can download from the CORENET-X website, right? And then I can open this file and it straight away templatizes those parameters. There you go. All the 1000 over parameters are now in a single template. And here you have a choice to sort of group select them, right? And straight away make them as an instance parameter, for example, group them under a certain category, right? And value by group, which wherever there's a value by group possible, you can vary them or align them by group type. And then you can assign them to a family category as well, right? And once you have done so, then you can just simply click next and move on to save this file so that you can directly use inside Revit. So that's how easy it is. And you can then later run that file and update, and all the parameters will get updated straight up. Yeah. So
all right, Sagar.
Yeah.
We have, I think while you're on this demo, maybe we can take Jenny's question, who is
Yeah.
asking, is there an inbuilt checker to check values? Like if the
So-
railing height is above 1 meter.
So Brad, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, again, that's a great question. I love that question. The one thing that at the moment we use for the model checker is we can check a value. So we can check whether, first of all, there is a value associated with the parameter, and we can check what that value is. What we can't check is logic. So we can't check whether the distance from one wall to the door is the square root of something or a formulaic value. We can't check that logic. We know that that's where we probably need to get to in the future, but right now it's about whether it's populated and what that parameter is and whether it is something that is within the limits. And so we can use the model checker configuration file to do that, and the desktop app to use as the model checker for Revit. So it's a great question. I understand why you've asked the question, but right now the tool doesn't quite do that.
All right. Now, there is some interesting questions coming in, just for some variety. There's a question from Milos Jovanovic. Thank you for your question. And you're asking, are there any other vendors that support the export to IFC-SG? So it's a similar question to what Kyung Kiet has asked. So yes, the answer is yes. You can see that Yixiang has responded directly in the chat box. There are a few other products that support IFC-SG. You know, there may be some tools that you're already familiar with, so you can check them out. There are, tools that do different things. And, at BuildingSMART Singapore, we are working with, all the technology partners available for them to be able to export to IFC-SG as well. So if you've got questions, if you want to drive that conversation, then I invite you to join us at BuildingSMART Singapore, and we can pursue that discussion together. All right. An interesting question that I want to bring up, which IFC viewer should we use for IFC models? So Yixiang has given some suggestions. Any comments, Sagar and Brett, about what IFC viewers work the best?
So
They should all work.
but I personally use the ODA viewer. I like the ODA viewer, the Open Design Alliance, and that allows you to federate IFC models. So even if you export 20 IFC models, you can federate them, right? And we also use the Autodesk Docs viewer. Autodesk Docs has a beautiful viewer that you can view IFC parameters, as well as the good part here is that you can actually compare between one version and first version of IFC and second version of IFC, the changes that were done in the model. So Autodesk Docs, which is actually included in all the AEC collections that people have, Revit users have, that can allow you to compare between 2-3 different versions of IFC files as well within Docs.
Yeah, but the ODA viewer, I just support what Sagar said, is very, very good. And a lot of the things that we test in both Autodesk Docs and we test using the ODA viewer, which is fantastic.
Maybe I can just add here, which is that one of the projects that BuildingSMART Singapore wants to pursue is to, of course, have a platform where we can review various products. So, as a community, right, we can contribute to, which IFC viewer works, which ones don't. And, I think from there, we can also help each other to be more productive and efficient, with the tools that we are using. So if you join us, keep a lookout for this project where we will build a platform that, allows you to comment, like, review, and share your experience with other built environment professionals here. And, soon enough, I think we would have enough feedback from the ground, to determine what works for you. So thank you all of you for joining us, and I wish you an enjoyable weekend ahead. Thank you for joining us.